Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now firstly, apologies if the lighting and the wind is playing havoc with this recording. I'm actually staying at Oak Camp, my summer tent retreat, so we have to put up with what Mother Nature throws at us. Secondly, I'm also very conscious that the topic I'm about to talk about, I'm not dressed in a manner which is commensurate to the theme. However, this is one of my sort of conversational, philosophical conversations, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss the opportunity to have this chat. So apologies for all of the defects, but the subject will hopefully be engaging. And today's topic of conversation, the death of style, has been prompted by an article I read in a newspaper which relates to a man who is something of an icon of men's style, certainly here in the United Kingdom, and that is a man called Patrick Grant. Now Patrick Grant may be somebody that you are not familiar with if you're not British and you don't operate within the men's style circles. So I will just take a moment to explain who the man is, and I think why his point of view carries some weight when it comes to men's style. So Patrick Grant, who is he? Well, he's a man in his early 50s right now, but he's been prominent in the style world for a couple of decades. If you are British, you may be familiar with him because he is a judge and a style consultant on the television series or program called The Great British Sewing Bee, which is a program about the creation of clothing, sewing, as it suggests. And the reason why Patrick Grant is in that position is because he's got quite a storied history in the style world. So basically, he owns a company, a clothing manufacturing company called Cookson and Clegg. He rescued that from being a company that went out of business. He's very much interested in the heritage of style and, making sure that things don't disappear from our style world. He's been a creative director with Barber clothing, so Barber jackets, designed some of their stuff, but he's perhaps most famous for his work on Savile Row. And his stuff is, his actions were amazing. I think it's 2005. As a relatively young man, I think he was only about 35 at the time, he became aware that Norton & Sons, a really prominent tailoring house on Savile Row, I think they are number 15 Savile Row, their number on the street, they were selling up in 2005. And I think he realised that if Norton & Sons were sold, they would probably disappear. So he sold his house, he sold his car, and he bought Norton & Sons as a going concern, as a bespoke tailoring house on Savile Row. And he turned it around. Now the importance of Norton & Sons can't be understated. I mean, I'll just tell you, because I made a note of the people who have previously patronised Norton & Sons. Winston Churchill went to Norton & Sons when he was a younger man. In later life he went to Pools, a little bit further up the street, but he was a Norton & Son guy. Chuck Yeager, the American test pilot, famously the first man ever to break the sound barrier, Mach 1 in a plane. Baron von Richthofen, the famous World War German ace fighter pilot. Also Fred Astaire in the Hollywood era, Tony Curtis, Cary Grant bought his suits from Norton & Sons, as did my favourite Hollywood icon, David Niven. And even Alfred Hitchcock bought his suits there too. So Norton & Sons, amazing history. So this is Patrick Grant, basically. He is a man who knows his way around style. Now he's recently launched a book all about the hand-making process of bespoke suits on Savile Row. I've got to be honest, I have ordered it. It's just come out, I haven't received it yet. But in the last week, he was in a famous literary festival here in the UK called the Hay Festival in Wales, in Powys in Wales, promoting that book. He ended up on a panel with other style experts, if you can call them that, And he made some observations which I found fascinating and I want to share with you. But what really gripped the ire of Patrick Grant was really the vice-like grip that many Chinese-style conglomerates have suddenly got their grip on the style market. And actually, I think they are, and I agree with him, they are killing style at its core. And he gave some statistics in his observations in the festival which shocked me. They knocked me onto my seat. Firstly, you may be familiar with the Chinese style conglomerate Shein. Okay, they are believed to be the world's biggest retailer of style of any kind, and this is unbelievable. It's alleged that they release up to 2,000 new products across their platform every day, many of which are produced using AI. There's no human design interaction anymore. They are merely cranking out items because they are what people are searching for online. They're using data to create things that people are looking for. There's no actual creativity involved. They are estimated to have a value of 90 billion British pounds in the marketplace today, making them way and above, one of the largest style, if not the largest style company in human history. But hot on their heels is a competitor, Temu. You've undoubtedly heard of Temu. They're always promoting stuff on various platforms. Chinese rival. In Temu's first year of operation, they spent £1.5 billion on marketing. And if you're wondering where that money went, on February of 2024, they ran a series of ads over the Super Bowl weekend in America, in which they promoted the $15 million worth of giveaways. During that period, they recruited 100 million active users across their platforms, and 130 million people downloaded their app. That's Temu. It is unbelievable. And the concerns that Patrick Grant has, and I have to say I shadow his concerns, are basically born from the numerous complaints which stem from consumers of those platforms, basically. So what are the concerns? Data protection, all right? Data privacy. When you enter these sites, you download their platforms, you are giving them data. And where that data goes, how it's sold, how it's used, there's very little control. There are forced labour concerns in relation to the production of their products. If you buy products from Europe and other, quite westernized countries, you know that the people making those products are safe, secure, they're paid a living wage. It's a good thing. In the Middle East, the Far East, in the places where Temu and Shein produce their products, there is no guarantee that the people making them have a happy, even bearable life. Intellectual property concerns are also raised constantly about these two conglomerates and many others like them. I'm not just using those, but many others too. Because, we're a company, shall we say, for the sake of argument, Ralph Lauren. They design a new product. A human being, a designer, will design a product. There is research and development. There is product testing. There's all sorts of things which go into a product before it ever hits the market. But other companies who pay no interest to intellectual property rights, they will steal that design, and they will mass produce it in hundreds of millions of numbers in volume, using people in factories somewhere around the world with low quality components, often man-made components. They are choking out these companies that put effort and determination into the production of products. And there's product quality as well, because I don't know if you've ever seen or handled or even bought some products from these mass producing companies, but they are generally crap. You will wear them a few times, they'll break down, they'll be shoddy, there's no quality to them. You're wasting your money buying from these companies. And these huge organizations are literally clogging the world with the products they're making. Patrick Grant actually made a reference to the fact that there are now half a trillion items of clothing in the world today. And at our current rate of consumption and use, that is enough for the next 7 generations of human beings without the need to make or buy any future products. We've got 7 generations of items already made and ready to go. And these companies are cranking them out. And Grant makes the hypothesis that, which resonates with me definitely, and it should with you if you're interested in style and the way it's going, that fashion activity and style activity has effectively died. Because every time if you take your mobile phone out and you're being made aware, excuse me, of new releases, new products coming out time and time again, style is no longer driven by human beings wanting to wear things. We are now being driven by products coming out which we are told to buy. So the style process of humans wanting things, them being produced, and then, all coming around in a circle, it's been interrupted by these vast conglomerates who are just creating things, which basically their only interest is to get us to buy. It's not about serving our need, it is about us serving their need. And that is very much where I think that the expression, the death of style, has it already arrived? It's an interesting conversation to make. Now, I don't just come to you today with doom and gloom. I'm not a doom monger, all right? I never believe in giving up. What I come to you today with is a call to action, all right? Because yes, we're already in this position where things are not looking great for the style world. I am myself, as I go through my own small, tiny slither of a style journey in my life, I am constantly seeing companies on the brink of disappearance. Recently I went on a factory tour of Tricker's shoes, a company that's been around 130 years or so, on the cusp of falling out of business because production numbers are falling and falling. I've been to other places. Where was I recently? I was reading about things like Dent's gloves and things like that were very, very up against the wall, really in danger of disappearing. And we've seen very traditional companies disappear in recent years. Aquascutum, to name but one, Crombie, falling away and never to come back. I talked about earlier how Norton & Sons, one of the greatest tailoring houses on Savile Row, they were at the very cusp of disappearing. If a man hadn't stepped in, sold his life to be able to buy them and keep them going. Today they are a going concern, making more than 300 bespoke suits a year, making them, very viable. They now make shirts as well. They are a very successful company now, but they were on the very precipice. And that is because we were buying all of these low quality, high volume things from Chinese conglomerates whose only concern is to remove money from us, the buyers. So my calls to action for you are 2 that I'm going to ask you to do, and they are simple. The first one is when you're about to buy your next item of style, whatever that may be, a pair of shoes, a pair of trousers, a shirt, a jacket, an overcoat, maybe even your socks, right? Down to that level. Before you buy it, find out where its origin is. Find out what it says on the label, it has been made. Inquire. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. And when you find out where it has been made on this planet, use that knowledge to steer your consideration of whether you buy that product or buy from somewhere else which is more akin with the philosophy to which we are talking about today. Buy local, buy better. That is the future to keep things going. And when you have those considerations, let me ask you to consider human rights. Who made that product? In what part of the world? And what actual human rights were considered in the making process? Secondly, has there been intellectual property theft in the making of that product? If you're buying something which looks exactly like a product from a traditional tailoring house or a company which makes those products, has somebody stolen their design and they're cranking them out cheaply with low quality products? Or, is it really something you should be buying because of that? Sustainability of components is huge. Is the product you're buying man-made, synthetic, or is it natural fibre? Because if it's man-made, synthetic, it'll be around on this planet 1,000 years after you die. Do you really want to be responsible for the production of something which is going to clog up the ecosystem of this planet and find its way into a massive landfill site which will never truly decay and in fact cause damage to the ecological environment of the country in which your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will be born and live in the future? And finally, product quality. Are you buying it just because it's cheap, or are you buying it because it has real value to you? Right? It's far better to save your money and buy something of better quality than buy 2 things which are cheap, 3 things which are cheap, and you have to throw them away and you never get enjoyment and true quality out of the item. Now, my second call for action is this. Bear in mind that there is already 500 billion items of clothing in this world. Do you really need to buy a new one? Or is the item that you've already got repairable? What I'm asking you to do is consider repairing as the first option before buying another one. And this really stems into the first one, because if you've bought higher quality items are actually made with repairability as part of their life cycle in the world. I've already mentioned a few brands which this applies to. Tricker shoes. Went to the factory. I saw their factory refurbishment program in operation in that factory. If you buy a pair of shoes like Trickers or any of the higher quality shoes that are available these days, particularly Goodyear welted, when the sole wears out or an item of that shoe wears out, you can send them back to the factory. It's typically about 20% of the original price of the product to have a refurbishment, and that shoe or boot or whatever it is will be fully refurbished and it will come back to you almost like a new product. But it is the same product that's been repaired. Repairability. Same goes for Dent's gloves. I mentioned them. They've got a factory refurbishment program. If the Dent's gloves becomes unraveled or ripped or damaged, you can send it back to the factory and they will repair it. Barber jackets, I mentioned them. They've got a factory refurbishment program. If they get damaged, ripped, if a popper goes, the zip breaks down, you can send it in and they will repair it. And you get an almost like new product back in return. And you also get the satisfaction, and for me it's a really deep satisfaction, that when I buy an item like that, I can keep it going for decades. It's so enjoyable to know that your clothing goes on a journey with you for life. It develops a story of its own. So think about repairability. And I would say this to you, if it's good enough for my king, King Charles, right, it's good enough for you. He is very well renowned for thinking about repairability in his products. He's got a pair of shoes by John Lobb, 50 years old, wears them all the time in public. They've got visible patches on them. They're 50 years old because he has them repaired. He has repairs in his clothing, his suits. He doesn't throw things away just because they've got a little bit of damage. He repairs them. And he reuses products from a previous generation. He's been seen wearing his late father's overcoat in the wintertime. Repairability, reusability, right? Let's think about how we can get the most out of the best quality products that we can invest in. And the other thing we can do is lean on the policymakers to do something about that as well. Now in Sweden, they have abolished VAT, value added tax, on clothing repairs. If that took place in the UK, it would remove 20%, VAT is 20% in the UK, off the price of repairs of clothing. I believe France are also considering incentivizing the repairing of clothing by a sort of favourable taxation regime. Let us, where we can. If you live in the UK, write to your MP. If you live in the US, write to your representative or wherever you are in the world and tell them lean on the tax policymakers to take value-added tax, VAT, or whatever your local state taxes are, whatever, off clothing repairs. Make it possible for tailors and seamstresses to fix our clothing without paying tax, to keep clothing in circulation longer, to reduce the burden of all of these unwanted additional crappy items of clothing clogging up our planet. So there we go, folks. A philosophical conversation today from Oak Camp, where I'm amongst nature, and I would hate to see nature be destroyed by my love of style. And also think about where you're buying those clothes in the future too. And your children, the people in your orbit, ask them to do the same. We can make a difference one item at a time. It might be scratching the surface, but nothing happens without a beginning. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation on the death of style. If you have, thumbs up, subscribe, send me an email, drop me a comment, buy me a coffee, become a patron, get extra videos that I make for my patrons. And I will see you again very soon.